Well, hello there. Let's get straight into the meat and potatoes. So, they've done it again. Ashley Banfield. They've come through. They've got a source. And they've got some information. Let's talk about it. So, apparently, Bryan Kohberger, on his phone, he has pictures. He has pictures of one of the female victims in the Idaho 4 case. Now, look, we don't know if this is true. And look, trial by media is very, very different than trial in a courtroom. But it would be fair to say that Bryan Kohberger is losing in the trial by media. And look, realistically, the guy is innocent until proven guilty. And there's a lot of people still on the fence. But like I say, the trial by media is not going well. And in fact, if you look at all of the things that have come out in terms of this platform, News Nation, Ashley Banfield, all these people who have apparently got sources who are feeding information from close to the case. So not people like Justin so much, but people who could potentially be credible. It does paint a certain picture, and that picture isn't good. But it may answer some questions with regards to what happened on the night itself. And the more this picture gets painted, it does sadly paint some people continuously in a bad light. And I'll tell you as to why. Because what they're saying is look, there was a phone, and this phone has some pictures, and these pictures are of one of the victims. Now, we kind of know through early in this case, the investigations that we ourselves did. I myself looked, and we looked at Instagram, for instance, and it did show that both Kaylee and Maddie had been liked by an account under the name Bryan Kohberger. And look, it could be argued these accounts looked like they were not a new account. They looked real, let's say that. But looking real and being real is different, but it was early on in the investigation. It was just after, Bryan Kohberger had been announced. Now, is it possible that people altered names on accounts and went through the girls' accounts to make it look a certain way? Of course it is. There was a lot of accounts cropping up under the name Bryan Kohberger, but I will say that the accounts in question have subsequently been removed, pulled down. Now, look, what I noticed and what I'd put in community feed a long time back was the fact that it would appear that Madison was indeed the person who he was the most fixated upon. Yes, he had liked some pictures of Kaylee, but Madison's, it blew apart kind of that balance. It was quite clear in that sense that he was focusing on Madison. So let's just run out a scenario and see whether we can make a few things make sense. So we're working on the principle that Bryan Kohberger is the guy. And again, I do this for the purpose of this video. I'm not saying he is guilty. I'm not saying he is innocent. I am well and truly, personally, on the fence with it until it goes to court. But let's look at it. So he is coming to this area, and he, for some reason, he gets fixated on this group, this group of people. Now, there must be a reason for that. Now, it could have been that he'd just seen them. It could have been the Greek restaurant. He could have been in there. But contradictory to that, the owner of said restaurant claims that Bryan Kohberger never went in there. So, in effect, he kind of stood up for Bryan, because if he'd have turned around or she'd have turned around and said, no, he came in, that's your link to that initial meetup. So, let's just say he's done something or something along the line as they've sparked his interest. And we heard in amongst all this that he had reached out to one of these females in their DMs and they had shunned him. And maybe that shunning was the straw that broke the camel's back. So he goes to this area the 12 times that have been mentioned, and he is learning about the property. He's learning about how these individuals operate, where they go, what they do, when they come back, who enters the house, who does, lights going on, lights going off, figuring out whose room is whose. And he recons this work. And we'll come back to this point. So he's reconned the house. He then learns on this specific night that they've come back. Maybe he is monitoring social media, the food truck video, etc., and it gets him to a point where he knows when they're going back to the house. He leaves his property, drives over to Moscow, Idaho, and he enters the house. He must know he can enter the house. He must know that the door is unlocked, because I can't see him breaking into the house or feeling or turning up there feeling that he's going to have to break in. Or would he be carrying a crowbar, perhaps? Would he be carrying something else to assist breaking in? Or does his recon work conclude he can simply walk into this house? Has he done it previously? Gets into the house. He knows where he's going. He manages to go upstairs to where Madison and Kaylee are. Now, this is your issue, because you hear that underneath, on the middle level, you've got Dylan, who is hearing some things. He thinks she hears them playing with a dog. So at this stage, it would be fair to assume that perhaps what she is in fact hearing is the commotion of this attack. Now, he then comes back downstairs, but the noise from upstairs, not only has it roused Dylan, but it's roused Ethan and Xana. And Ethan comes out to see what's going on. What's this noise? What's going on? I heard this thumping. Then we heard that Dylan had heard someone say, "Don't worry, I'm here to help." Or words to that, And then there is a subsequent attack upon Ethan and Xana. Now, my critical mind feels that that is the most plausible way that this played out. Now, obviously, some of the players can change in terms of who is indeed the perpetrator. It could also change that the perpetrator had assistance, had help. But it does make the most sense. The things that don't make sense are the fact that Steve Gonsalves had thrown into the mix that this person didn't have to go upstairs and these little comments, but at the end of the day, they just fall into the background like much of the information that we've heard in this case. But I feel that this is the most credible scenario, and I feel that this is going to be resonated in the courtroom if indeed Bryan Kohberger pleads not guilty and goes the whole 9 yards and makes everybody walk through it. The question is now, will he plead not guilty? If he did this, if he did it and he knows the evidence that they've got, he knows that they've got him in this area this 12 times, that's going to make it look like he was stalking them. They've got a phone that's full of pictures of an individual, and they know what happened in that house, way beyond us. Maybe he did indeed slip up and leave the knife sheath there, and he will know that. He will know. Now, is Bryan Kohberger going to feel like he can fight this? Because if he says not guilty and he makes everybody walk through it, it could cost him his life. Now, I imagine that the plea deal will be on the cards. Look, this is what we've got. Plead guilty, save your life. Now, again, I will stay innocent until proven guilty, and there are alternatives. There are other things that could have happened. There are other things that could play out. I said I would look back to the recon work and this sort of situation. I struggle with this entire situation because we've heard Bryan Kohberger's mum on her Reddit account stating that she was worried that Bryan would be lonely. Some people have turned around and said that that could have been a nod to perhaps a dangerous proclivity, that she was scared of being ignited in that situation. But it could be someone else. Perhaps she just knew that Bryan wanted friends. He was a loner. He was someone who seldom had people around him. And if you wanted to pin something on someone, the best person to do it is the person who has no friends, has nobody to back them up, nobody to give them an alibi, nobody to help them. Food for thought. Let me know down below what you think. And please tell me where Ashley Banfield keeps getting all of her sources, as mine seem to be a bit shit sometimes. I'll see you all in the next one.